Talkin Money! Talkin Money!
Well, alrighty then. We're back to Talkin Money with Jeff Tarbell.
Good morning, everybody. This is Monica Reyes and Colin Grail. We are certified financial planners with the private wealth advisory firm Westlake, Grail & Glover. We're in for a vacationing Jeff Tarbell. And coming back from the break, want to congratulate Rick, the winner of our first quiz of the morning. The question, as the end of the first quarter approaches with stocks showing gains, how did the Dow Jones do last year? The correct answer was it was up 6%. So congratulations, Rick. You've won yourself some ski passes. Have fun. Colin and I are often asked questions about retirement in addition to the investments and some of the information we presented in the first part of the show. So, Colin, can you share a little bit about, what are the concerns, what are keeping people up at night that cause them to call you and I and the rest of our team at Westlake, Grail & Glover?
Well, what I like to say is that we've got really a crisis around retirement confidence. It's really an epidemic. I think people are starting to say, okay, last decade was a tough one for investments. We all know what's going on in real estate. Everybody's 10 years older, and they're starting to look at where they stand and how they live and try to figure out what they're going to do in the future. And we've just got a huge concern about how in the heck are people going to be able to retire. There's just a 2012 retirement confidence survey that came out, and there's lots of information in this. I'm just going to point out a couple things. And, number one, the American confidence in their ability to retire comfortably is at historical low levels. Just 14% are confident they'll have enough money to live comfortably in retirement. The next one is workers' confidence about having enough money to pay for medical expenses and long-term care expenses in retirement remains even below the 14% level. In 1991, 11 years ago. No, 20 years ago. That's 20 years ago. Wow. 11% of workers said they expected to retire after age 65. As of 2012, 20 years later, 37% believe they're going to have to work beyond age 65. And more than half of workers report they have not sat down with their spouse, and they and their spouse have not tried to calculate how much money they will need to have by the time they retire. They just don't sit down and do the plan. Mm-hmm. They don't have any idea what it will take to replace their lifestyle in retirement. And I know that that's true even from the people that come to our office who are a lot of times in decent shape. They're afraid to know. They don't. Mm-hmm. They know they don't have enough, and they're afraid to know what that number really looks like of what they would need to be able to comfortably retire.
Right. So since we can't predict what's going to happen in the future, the best thing is to plan. And how do folks do that?
Our biggest challenge is when we talk about financial planning and investment advising, and whether it's with us or anyone else, is to get people to set the investment discussion aside and sit back and create a life plan. Where are we today? Where are we trying to get to? And what is the reality of our current situation? And really put those cards face up on the table. That's a tough thing for some people to do, for many people to do, because they know they're not going to necessarily like the answer. And mm-hmm. The answer could possibly degenerate into having to make some changes, possibly even changing their current lifestyle so they can have a secure lifestyle down the road. And so that's really how we define financial advising and financial planning, is starting with the roadmap, starting with the plan. Many people believe that financial planning is all about investments. And in reality, that is really the last part of the planning puzzle that we need to talk about is, okay, now that we have a plan, what's the appropriate investment strategy to make the plan work? But most people start right with the investments, and they don't really have a plan. We often say people spend more time planning their summer vacation than they do their financial security and their lifelong plan. So one of the things that we like to focus in on, because this is a tool that is the most underused, misunderstood retirement tool out there. Many of you own one. Many of you know about this, but you just don't know how they work, and that's the IRAs. It sounds simple, But IRAs, when they were first introduced in 1973, there was one IRA. You could put $2,000 into it, you could deduct it off your taxes, and that was about it. And that was to defer income and let that grow to the future. Well, the future is now becoming now for many of those people. And what's evolved over the years is there's at least 10 different types of IRAs. There's various contribution limits. There's various income levels that allows you to know who can put money in when. 78% of IRAs are held by, that people hold are held at an investment firm where there's a financial advisor. And most advisors just do not have the training or the experience to give what I'll call true expert advice on IRAs. Same thing with CPAs and attorneys. We walk into a CPA office and we expect them to know all the rules about IRAs, and that's not their job. We often get consulted by IRAs and the attorneys when they design the estate plan. So 50% of the people between 55 and 64 have an IRA, and 42% over 65 have IRAs. So the baby boomers, by and large, that have saved money for retirement have IRA assets. But this is what I would consider to be one of the most underused tools that's out there. So to start with, what I'd like to do is just talk about a few of the things that actually help people get money into IRAs. We'd love your questions. We'd like to be able to answer any questions that are out there. If you have an opportunity to call us at 339-1140 or 800-920-1140. We can also take some questions off the text line at 44-1140. And we'd be happy to deal with your questions and calls. So Monica, let's talk a little bit about what some of the misconceptions are and what some of the opportunities are to actually get money into IRAs.
Absolutely. I don't fall into that 55 to a 64, 65 plus age range. So I'm wondering, well, how do I get money into my retirement account? What do I need to do to get into an IRA? And as you mentioned, Colin, there's various eligibility requirements. The most basic one is if you work, if you earn money, you are eligible to do an IRA of some form. So that's the good news, folks out there, that no matter what it is that you're doing, if you are getting a paycheck, put money aside for yourself for the future. The tax deadline to get money into an IRA for last year, 2011,
Before you go to that, Monica, a lot of people come into me and say, well, I was told I make too much money to put money into an IRA. So what do you mean by anybody can put money into an IRA?
So good question, Colin. So maybe the folks out there that are working, you get a great paycheck. So your CPA or someone may have told you, well, you make too much. There are income limitations for people before you can be eligible to make a either tax-deductible IRA contribution or even an after-tax Roth IRA contribution. So one strategy that Colin and I help people with is this idea that you can make what's considered a non-deductible IRA contribution. You won't get to reduce your taxes. You won't get to deduct that on your tax return, but you can turn around and convert that contribution into a Roth IRA conversion account. Now, let me step back and just for the folks out there, as I mentioned, the Roth IRA, that is funded with after-tax dollars. So you're not going to see a tax benefit today from this, but if you put the money in today and it grows over the next 20 years, all of those earnings are tax-free to you later on in retirement when you take the money out. So there's a strategy there to put away some money that'll give you that taxable or that flexibility for your taxes down the road.
Okay. And then, and again, Roth IRAs have their own limits also. People are said, we can't put money into Roth IRAs. We can't put money into a regular IRA. And that's generally not true. There are limits and rules, but usually understanding the full breadth of the rules, if you have a job and you're under 70 and a half, anyone can put money into an IRA. If you're over 70 and a half, you still may be able to put money into an IRA if you are working or running a business. So we just like to get that clear out there that when an accountant says you can't put money into your IRA, that may only be partially true. It just means there may be some special rules around what you can do and how you have to do it.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. And before I interrupted you, you were talking about some of the deadlines that are out there.
Right. One of the things we always hear, April 15th, that's the big day. Don't forget, guys, the tax deadline this year is April 17th. So you do have a little extra time. You can make those IRA contributions, whether it's after-tax Roth, pre-tax or tax-deductible traditional IRA. Self-employed folks, you can even establish a retirement plan for yourself called a SEP IRA, all the way up until that tax filing deadline. So do consider whether you have the ability to make those contributions. It'll work out for you in the end. And as Colin mentioned, do talk to your CPA about the opportunity. But if you get any answers that you think, Colin and Monica said I might be able to do something else, get in touch with a financial planner, financial advisor, just to make sure that you've got all of the information to make that decision.
Okay, Monica, we've got a call or a question coming in on the text line. It says, I have $400,000 in IRAs. I'm 50 years old, saving $12,000 per year, no pension, make $100,000 a year. Am I okay for retirement?
Wow.
How do we... And the answer is, number one, congratulations on
Right.
accumulating some money and the fact that you're saving and the fact that you have a job.
Mm-hmm.
The answer on are you okay for retirement is I have absolutely no idea. There's so many things that we would need to know to be able to answer that question. So from that, I can say you're making $100,000, you're saving $12,000, you're probably paying some taxes, so you probably are spending $60,000 a year. $5,000 a month, $5,000 to $6,000 a month is what you're actually living on. So the question is, will you need all of that in retirement? Will you need more? Will you need less? Will you have medical insurance provided? Do you have it today provided by your employer? And will you need to replace that medical insurance out of your budget when you go to retire? Do you have a company car that you have to replace? Do you have a mortgage that may get paid off? So here are some of the questions that we need to know, and then helping you map out both lifestyle and then what are some of the things that we need to allow for as we move into the future. Anything else to contribute to that, Monica?
Well, I think the list of what ifs could go on and on. So, I mean, you've mentioned the mortgage, you've mentioned medical, our family. Do kids need to be put through college? Are we in that sandwich generation where you're kind of helping both sides and, maybe you're worried about your folks? So, those questions are the things that I think as a financial planner, it's not about the numbers, it's not about the investment. It is about a lifestyle. It is about some of those, more subjective things that are unique to each person. So it really is a tough call to make, without knowing all of that info. But, as you said, congratulations to this particular listener. And I'd encourage, call us.
The other thing I would observe is that he said he has $400,000 in IRAs and he's contributing each year. I don't know if he has any other assets besides IRAs, but the concern I would have is are all of your assets going to be in an IRA when you retire?
Mm-hmm.
Will they all be tax deferred, and will 100% of what you need to live on in retirement be from a taxable income source? And so if the answer is that's where you're headed, there may be some opportunities to create a more balanced tax picture down the road, which I believe will give you a more balanced and more opportunities to pay lower tax and probably be more qualified to pass what we call the means testing that is possibly going to be in place 10 and 15 years down the road. So what I mean by that is, will Social Security and Medicare benefits be limited based on how much you earn? If the answer is possibly, then do we have strategies in place to give you options of how you will take your money out of your accounts when retirement comes, so that you can be in a lower tax bracket, so that you will be more likely to qualify for your Social Security and your Medicare benefits. So those are just some of the questions that we like to map out when we work with our clients. Okay, believe it or not, we're up against another break. I've got a quiz question. This time, let me give you the phone numbers you can reach us at for our quiz question. 339-1140. You can also call us at 800-920-1140. And the quiz question for today is, name one island that Jeff Tarbell has visited this week. Name one island that Jeff Tarbell has visited this week. And we'll be back to answer that right after the break.